Hey, all my Capricorn friends. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today with your January 2025 monthly horoscope. This horoscope is based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I'm referring to Capricorn, I'm referring to Capricorn rising as dictating the first house and the landscape of the chart. If you don't know your rising sign, you'll want to go to any one of the free birth calculators on the internet. You just need your exact time and location of birth to determine that information. When I talk about a time and a day, it's based on the Pacific time zone, so please adjust for your location. This is the beginning of the year starts pretty intensely. It's kind of a hangover from 2024. In January, starts off with Mars and Pluto in an exact opposition. Let's pull up the chart. So here we see Pluto is in your second house, and it will be for the next 20 years, making an opposition to Mars in your eighth house. And Mars is retrograding. So to me, Mars is the planet that's more the underdog, and Mars is about to retrograde into your seventh house, where it is in its fall. When a planet is in its fall, it's in a place it doesn't feel comfortable, it doesn't feel respected, it doesn't feel valued or heard. And with Mars being such an assertive sign and Cancer being such a maternal and nurturing sign, we see the clash. Here, what's going on for me is Mars is being opposed by Pluto, who is saying, is your, what's your operating system? It's time to move into the 2.0 version. It's time to start to really connect with your value, with your skills, and with moving your story forward. Saturn is your ruling planet, and it happens to also rule your second house. So naturally, this is a house that will mature over time and more than likely could have something to do with the technological advances that will be coming up over the next 20 years. So on some level, you're being tasked at this time to really look at, your assertion and any angers or resentments that you might have, or feelings of, I even want to say feelings of being too impatient. And if that is the case, there's an opportunity to revisit things from a more, if we look at the seventh house, it's not just marriages between a man and a woman. I shouldn't say that. It's not just marriages for life partners. It is contractual relationships with business partners, professional relationships. It's also the house where we see peace and harmony and balance and fairness. So as Mars retrogrades through this period, we're going to be reviewing that. This is also not the first opposition between Mars and Pluto. Initially, back in the fall, late October, November, Pluto was in the last degrees of your first house, and Mars and Pluto met at that time as Mars was going through that, through the end of Cancer and the beginning of Leo. Now, the retrograde, we have a slightly different dynamic because Pluto's even more powerful I believe, in Aquarius than it is in Capricorn. And Pluto's powerful wherever it goes, digging deep, excavating for that toxic waste that is holding you back in some way and preventing you from your hopes and your dreams. We also have two other planets retrograding. We have Jupiter in Gemini, which is your sixth house of work, and we have Uranus in your fifth house of Taurus. Now, Uranus is interesting because Uranus started its shadow period back in December, and it started stationing at 23 degrees on December 19th. And it will continue to stay at 23 degrees all the way through till March. I'm going to get to that a little bit later, but it's significant because this is the house of your personal expression, of your implementing many ways, getting on a world stage. It's the house of romance. It's the house of the conception of children or the conception of something that you want to birth. It's the house of fun and entertainment and personal pleasure. So there's been this moving out of any stagnant energies for you. Now we're going to go to the 3rd, where we will see Venus enter her exaltation of Pisces. As soon as my computer does its thing. Okay, let me refresh. There we go. Here we see Venus has entered Pisces. When Venus enters Pisces, and Pisces is your 3rd house of communications, of your childhood experience when you were in grammar school, of your siblings, your cousins, your workmates, your teammates, your neighborhoods, your communities. And then we overlay the energy of Pisces, where there is the potential that you might have felt slightly invisible during that period of time. And I think that when we click on Venus at 0 degrees, we see that she is in what we call a transit yod. Now Mars is at 0 degrees retrograde, Leo, and the South Node is 0 degrees of Libra. This to me makes a focal point of Venus. What's my self-worth? Do I use my voice? Venus rules the voice in both the singing voice and the speaking voice. Even though the 3rd house of Gemini rules speaking, the voice, the tone of the voice, how we use the voice is ruled by Venus. So in here, I think this is about Capricorn using their voice to express themselves from a spiritually more soul-based, more authentic truth to your inner child type of way. And this is a finger of God. A yod is also known as a finger of God. So while the South Node is not traditionally considered in a yod, and this is a transit, to me, this is 2 blind spots. Some old habit I have of giving up something, acquiescing something. Libra is your 10th house of public reputation and social status. And it's the 10th house is naturally your house. So this would be being egoless to something. This would be being aware of any angers and resentments that actually could be holding me back, or the lack of being aware of it, because the quincunxes to me are a blind spot. But at the same time, these are intuitive hits pointing at Venus. So as Venus enters her exaltation, I think she gets an opportunity to talk more succinctly to her inner child about what she wants and what she desires and what she needs. And pretty soon she's going to get in a conversation with Saturn about putting that into the 3D world, Saturn being your ruling planet. Let's go to the 6th, where Mars will enter Cancer. And I think this is going to be a fairly significant feeling shift, because there's still the opposition to Pluto is still very much in play. And that 29 degrees reduces down to an 11, which to me illuminates what I'm thinking and and how my thoughts really represent my emotional body. So I think this is powerful. We also see that Mercury is in your 12th house at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. The 27th degree of Sagittarius is where the galactic center offers an opportunity to download solutions and information and inspirations from the universe through meditation, through intentional conversation with your inner being. I think that this is a very powerful point, because as Mercury has this conversation with the universe, the soul, source energy, we have an opportunity to start to put those downloads, those inspirations, those that information into your 1st house of self and start creating, building it in the 3D world. And I think that's supported as we start to see a trine forming over here to these 2 houses and the planets. All right, let's go to when Mercury will move into your 1st house on the 8th, but I think I'm going to go to the 9th because I get them in there. There we go. Now this is an interesting dynamic, because we just got these downloads from the universe, right? And then all of a sudden, this sort of kicks you into practical earthbound action and thought, which conflicts with the spiritual things that you just heard. I mean, and I want to put it this way for my Capricorns, you may have to do something very faith-based, like start your actions without being able to see immediately any kind of results and just continue forward. The nodes again are in just a few days are going to move into the Pisces Virgo axis, which is going to be your third and ninth house axis, which is going to offer you an opportunity to be egoless to some of the more archaic beliefs you might have, or the more rigid beliefs you might have, or the more stoic beliefs you might have that have been holding you back. Essentially, we have a T-square here to Mercury. And again, this is an examination of how the mind can work as a loop, how it can kind of run on its own steam without any intention at all. And then as we infuse through our emotions intention into our speech and our thoughts, we start to create things in the material. Okay, now we go to the 12th. And we will see the nodes shift for the next year and a half. I'll be doing a separate video on that because essentially what we're looking at is really being, I think the South Node is a point of being egoless to a bigger picture of what my soul intended on this planet. And when the South Node goes through an Earth sign for me, it's being egoless to that which, plays to my five senses, or somehow, oh, if I can see it, I have a sense of security, or I know where I'm going. The South Node might really compel all of us not to know where we're going. We'll have to do that faith-based. And then the North Node in your third house is really stretching you to be more connected to your soul's intention. And frankly, I've been talking about your ruling planet Saturn fostering and nurturing this dynamic for the whole time it's been in Pisces. Saturn spends 2.5 years through each house. So when it entered Pisces, and we see it's halfway through it now, so that would have been about a year ago, maybe a little more, depending on retrogrades. Saturn started to task all of us to really be more authentic, not to escape through, through being overly compassionate to other people's stories. And I don't think that Capricorn rising is really always fall for that. But at the same time, you could be impatient with the escapism, of people, or how people behave and they don't stand up straight. Because the third house is watery, and Pisces is super mutable, like the most mutable sign, I think. So you've really been tasking, your ruling planet has been tasking us to have a strong and disciplined and consistent conversation with our inner child, with our soul, with God, with the angels. And now Venus and Saturn are starting to talk about this implementation of the skills. An implementation of the voice, an implementation in the 3D world. And I think that's further evidenced by Mercury going through your first house. I'm starting to think about how I want to implement my 2.0. And the 2.0 is Pluto's transit through your second house, moving yourself into a new version of yourself, both emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, as you step into new possibilities in the future. Okay, on the 13th, we will have a full moon in Cancer. That is your seventh house at 23 degrees at 2:26 p.m. conjunct Mars. I'll be doing a separate video on that. On the 19th, we see we see Saturn and Venus in an exact conjunction at 16 degrees. And I think that this is beautiful because it's making a sextile to Mercury. So now the conversation's starting to get some rhythm, it's starting to get some flow. And I say this because it's not necessarily that the story is being moved forward, but maybe the plan is in place, or we have an idea of what we're wanting to do, or where we want to go, what we want to birth. There's going to be a growing stellium. That means 3 or more personal planets in your third house as we move further into the year. Venus is going to get all the way into your fourth house of Aries, and then she's going to retrograde back into Pisces. And at the same time, Mercury is going to move forward, and then Mercury is going to enter Pisces and retrograde. So both Venus and Mercury will be retrograding at the same time in your third house. So the seeds that you plant mentally and emotionally now will start to take shape and form, and then those retrogrades will give you an opportunity for fine-tuning those situations. We also see, we're going to go another day or so, and we see that the Sun and Pluto are in conjunction in your second house. And in no short order, Mercury will have this same conjunction. But here, it's interesting to me because Pluto is the furthest away from the Sun, in the darkest place in the solar system, at least that I know of, that we know of, as far as our planets go. And the Sun, naturally, astrologers will say that it combusts every planet. It outshines every planet that it becomes conjunct to. But here, because of the potential maniacal, psychological grip and manipulation that Pluto can represent, I think Pluto is really the stronger planet here, and that it's tasking the Sun to look at its ego and how it's asserting itself out into the world. Am I, being authentic? Are you being, true to your depths of your soul, or are you playing to something else? Because the Aquarian energy is very much an energy that wants to move the story forward, wants to use that innovation to help mankind in general. And it's also the natural house of Taurus, where our skills are demonstrated, where our voice is used to represent who we are, unlike the third house. And it's also the tone of the voice and how the voice is created, the family that nurtured your perceptions. So this is a powerful conjunction, because I think Pluto is really kind of, I almost feel like Pluto is challenging the Sun to ask what the truth of their ego really is. Are you edging God out, or are you being authentic? And I think that's supported by the 29-degree South Node in Virgo and the 29-degree sextile to the North Node and Neptune. So that's pretty powerful for me. Okay, don't want to belabor that too long. On the 25th, we're going to see Mars and Venus in an exact trine. Now, Mars is still retrograding. Mars is still the underdog here. But at the same time, I think that this is where Mars is starting to understand that, Mars being a pioneer, Mars being really the fireman, the hero, I run into the burning building. Usually, heroes work with a team. And this is where we become more aware of the intuitive barometer that is our emotional being. When you're, too hot in a situation or too steamy, you can't really be super productive. And if you go into a war situation that way, it diminishes your ability to be strategic. That's why, many times we want to see our military be, when they're being trained, be able to be emotionless during certain things. Or I don't want to say emotionless. I don't know, I'm getting off track. But anyway, I think that this is a favorable dynamic, because I think Mars is starting to use Saturn as a willingness to endure. I get it. There's a military feeling between your ruling planet and Mars that's giving me this like, buck up, buttercup, you know what you got to do, tough it out. And Venus is encouraging that by saying that you are valuable, Mars, but you also get to realize that we're valuable on the other end. Mars is working through some things. Mars is working through some resentments and some angers and some old stuff going through your house of Cancer, where Mars didn't feel nurtured or loved for what Mars is. So this is giving Mars an opportunity to reconcile that on some level. We do see the opposition to Mercury. this is a push-pull between what I've experienced and where I want to go. We're looking at when we see Mercury in your first house of Earth, this is Mercury thinking from the physical plane and the five senses. This trine is tasking Mars to go to a more intuitive and emotional place. Okay, enough of that nonsense. All right, let's go now to Mercury is going to have its conjunction with Pluto on the 27th. Oh, no, I think it's the 28th. Let me go to the 28th. As it enters Aquarius. And again, this is supported by the nodes because the monkey mind that Mercury can represent and the deep psychological imprint that manipulates our decisions. We don't even know it's manipulating us. It can be that ingrained. And what I believe is happening is that as Pluto moves through your second house, it's going to start to excavate and then reframe and transform anything that isn't working for your future, for the things that you really want to experience, Capricorn. Okay. So that's starting to rewrite the monkey mind and making us aware. On the 29th, we'll have a new moon in Aquarius. I'll be doing a separate video on that. And then on the 30th, we see Uranus move direct. Now, Uranus has still been at 23 degrees. Again, this is the longest time. It's almost 3 solid months at 23 degrees. So every planet that moves around it it's as if Uranus is standing so strong in the sky that it's shooting its rockets out towards the planets as they move around it. And here, when we click on it, we see that it's making a sextile to Mars and a sextile to Venus. I think this is the continued transformation and the rewriting of the conversation they've been having with each other. Gosh, I hope that everybody's following what I'm saying here. I feel a little bit like I hope I'm being clear. I also think that I haven't brought up Jupiter much, but Jupiter is transiting through Gemini, Gemini being your sixth house of work. All the epiphanies that you're starting to have and all the things you're implementing through this strong Aquarius second house and third house will be evidenced as Jupiter moves through Gemini and ultimately moves into your seventh house, which will then bring expansion into your professional as well as personal partnerships and a stronger sense of peace and harmony. So the things you're fostering in this first half of the year will, I think, start to show benefit in the second half of the year. And I think Uranus has a lot to do with that. So that's going to be a strong, when a planet is stationed in the sky, it's 5 times more powerful than when it's moving. So it's 5 times more powerful to help, take advantage of the energies over here of Neptune and of Venus as they are almost in an exact conjunction, and the North Node, than taking advantage of the energies that it's making to the South Node as we release any, slave mentalities, anything that grips me into this sort of, hamster wheel of being. Again, Virgo is your 10th house, and I'm sorry, your 9th house. And that's the house of your beliefs, of how you have been, it's a business house. The 9th house rules publishing, branding, marketing. And for me, it's in modern times, internet content that we create on the various platforms. So to me, being egoless is being authentic to your truth, to your Uranus 5th house, I should say Taurus 5th house with Uranus's transit in it, letting, the innovation take place, letting things get a little topsy-turvy so they become more authentic down the line. Oh my gosh, I hope this is making sense. All right, let's go to the last day of the month. I'm almost saying to Capricorn, allow things to get messy so they can clean up. That's kind of what I'm saying, because they could feel a little bit messy. So now we see Venus and Neptune in an exact conjunction in your 3rd house. This feels super dreamy to me. It feels like the last day of the January can be very fulfilling in the way of just laying around and thinking about the thing, imagining a world that's almost fanciful, how the utopia that it can be, the nirvana that it can be. The 27th degree is the Gemini degree. Both these planets are going to move into Aries and then retrograde back into Pisces. Obviously, Venus is the more quick moving, but this is two best friends hanging out together. And I do believe these are spiritual conversations. Now, there is the potential for those that are maybe not as aware or conscious of their imprint, the loop in their minds. There could be a little bit of a hiccup here. So I would warn, because here's Pluto making a half square over here to these planets. So I do have slight concerns for people who have addiction issues, but that does not necessarily have to take place. So, because it could be a day of wanting to escape a lot, wanting to just sort of, the spirits versus the spirits. All right, let me just move forward. I hope this made sense to you. I got a little bit esoteric moving out there into the ethernet of the world. So thank you so much for watching Capricorn and putting up with me this morning. Please check out your yearly video. I did a video for you month by month with the highlights of 2025, and I put chapters in it so you could refer to it back and forth throughout the year. There's also your Love and Money Tarot for January, and if you made it through this choppy video, please come back, like, and subscribe. I think I have a sugar hangover from the holidays. I'll see you soon. Take care.